in your meeting for YouTube Live. Okay. All right, we are live on YouTube. Okay, so we are like 4 minutes late in getting started. So I'm ready to start. You all are ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to the May Mug meeting, May of 2024. We've got a kind of an interesting presentation tonight. Several of us are going to show you some stuff based on Advent of Code. There's a website out there. I'm going to let Wilf talk about that in a couple of minutes, exactly what that is. So I'm not going to get into too much detail with it right now. But thanks for coming. We're still, post Craig, we're still trying to work our way through the workflow of our meetings. We need to set up some slides, some intro slides and stuff. We haven't done that yet, but we'll just muddle our way through it. Let's see. Gosh, what should I talk about? We meet the second Tuesday of every month on this Zoom platform. You can always find a link on the Mug.org website. I also send out the announcement to our announce mailing list every month. That also contains the link. Meetup gets out there and tells people that there's a meeting coming up. I think we need to start pushing it on Facebook and lots of other places. We just haven't been doing that yet, but we will. I don't know if there's any new people here. If you are new, raise your hand. Okay, Leader House. Why don't you just give us 2 seconds, tell us where you're coming from and how you heard about us.
Yeah, said I'll check it out.
Great. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoy it tonight and you come back every month.
Thank you.
Because we're here, come rain or shine. I can't tell you right now what next month's meeting is going to be. We're kind of scrambling, trying to set up the upcoming meetings. So if any of you have ideas, we're all ears. If you have a topic, if you have a speaker, maybe you want to talk about something. We are not stuck on formalities here. We'll take when people are going to give a talk, I'll tell them we usually like to go 45 to 90 minutes. If you can fill that time, great. What we find is anybody that tells me they only have 45 minutes worth ends up taking 90 minutes because there's some smart people in this group, and we ask questions and we dig in and learn stuff, and it's great. So if you have any ideas, just let us know. You can email board@mug.org if you'd like to suggest something, or you can just tell us right here during the meeting. We like to do jobs looking for people and people looking for jobs. So I'm going to open it up right now. If anybody knows of any jobs out there that are looking for people, if you just speak up and let us know. This is companies that are hiring. Anybody got any jobs looking for people? I don't see anybody. Okay, let's flip it around. How about people looking for jobs? Anybody out there looking for a job? Great. Everybody's gainfully employed. Super. Membership. Dave, how about if I turn it over to you for a minute and you can tell us about membership?
Sure. Am I on now?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. I see you.
Hear me and see me? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, membership. At one time we had severe expenses because we had to run a meeting hall. But even then and now, this is a completely open forum. Everybody is welcome under any conditions. We do, however, continue to have some expenses, and we'd like to keep our things going because we'd like to expand things in the future. So we have an opportunity for anybody who would like to become a dues paying member. It's $50 a year for individuals, and there are other rates for corporations and for students. If you feel like you'd like to be a dues paying member, you can go to our website and follow the links there, or contact Dick Williams, and he'll help you out, and you can use PayPal or any number of other avenues to do that. And it just kind of gives you the feeling of being one of the people, one of the in crowd, one of the people putting it on.
That's right. That's
And,
right.
recommend it if you can. If not, we certainly want you at our meetings, and you're fully welcome to join everything.
That's right. Thanks, Dave. One of the things I failed to do was introduce the board of directors. We have a group of 6 of us who put these meetings on every month. In fact, one of our members is a new guy. I'm gonna list off our members. I'm Jim McQuillan. I've been with the group for since 1986. We have Dick Williams. I think he's been along here just about as long as I have. I don't remember when he started. It was probably 86 or 87. Wolf, he's been around for a while. He gives lots of presentations for us. We really appreciate that. Dave Satwitz, you just heard from him. He's been around for a long time. And Justin Triplett, he's going to be one of the presenters tonight. And then our newest member, Joe Ryan. He's out in Lansing, and he just became a board member last month at our April elections. So welcome to him. Like I said, I don't have any announcements for upcoming meetings yet, although there will be a meeting. Like Lorne Michaels of Saturday Night Live says, we're putting a show on Tuesday night, not because we're ready, but because it's Tuesday night. So we will be here, and we will have something to tell you. Let's see. What else do I got to cover? Anything? Let's see.
Turn off your cell phone.
Yeah, please silence your cell phones. Silence your microphone. I guess that's the best way to do it, so that any outside noises we don't hear. Anything else I should cover before I hand it over to Wolf to explain our tonight's presentation? Did we just lose Wolf?
Yes. I'd like to mention something about the SEMCO, Southeastern Michigan Computer Organization meeting.
That's right.
We have just now started meeting in person as well as
Really?
on Zoom. So if you can join by Zoom or join in person, and if you go to the semco.org website, you will find out about all this. Also, just so you know, we meet at a makerspace called I3 Detroit. And it's in Ferndale, and that's where our in-person meetings are. So we are recovering from COVID, you could say, and it's nice to be meeting in person.
That's excellent.
We've had some. We don't know what the next month's meeting topic is, but we've had some interesting presentations. And if you go to our website and click on the menu bar, click on past meetings, you will see some interesting meetings. And if you click on the comment under each of the meeting notices of the past meetings, you will see the recordings of the past meetings. So that's a nice feature. We've had some good meetings. Also, if on a different topic, if there's interest in accessibility for websites, I know somebody who's an expert on it. Happens to be a niece of mine. She has done a presentation for SEMCO and got a very good response.
Excellent. there are other groups in the area. There's MD Lug. Normally Gib would be here to talk about it. I don't see Gib online tonight.
Information and links in the chat.
Yes, if you look at the group, the Zoom chat, there is a link there for Metro Detroit Linux Users Group. Yeah. So with that, Wolf, are you ready to move forward and tell us about tonight's adventure?
I am. So tonight we are solving the first Advent of Code problems. Let me tell you what Advent of Code is. It is a series of coding problems. They issue one per day, starting on December 1st and ending on December 25th. Each problem has two parts. When you solve the first part, and only when you solve the first part, they show you the second part. Usually, it's some kind of text processing problem. You have an input file, and you have to calculate a number. And once you've calculated that number from the input file, which depends on whatever kind of problem it is, I'm going to describe the first problem to you. You paste that number into a text box, and it tells you whether the number is correct or not. Now, in this problem, you have to log in to see the problem and see the place to put your answer. The input file for you is tied to your login. So two people have different answers to this. You can't just paste in somebody else's answer. Each problem comes with a tiny sample. You got to lower your hand, Richard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Each problem comes with a tiny sample. So if you are the kind of person who does TDD or writes tests, you can use the tiny sample and answer they give as your test input. You are allowed to solve the problem in any language you like. And we are going to solve it tonight in Rust, JavaScript, Perl, Python, Swift. We're going to do some debugging, and we're going to, for those languages that are less familiar to people, we're going to talk about those languages a little bit first. And I think that is all I need to explain. Is there anything else, Jim?
Point out the website for Advent of Code, just so people can go there on their own if they're so inclined. And we're doing the 2023 Advent of Code. They've been doing this for a number of years. We're doing 2023.
Can you share the website? Because I need to
Sure.
turn on permissions since I updated my system.
Yeah, okay. I will share the website. Let's see. Let me just find it here. Well, I'm gonna paste it in the chat. How's that? And I think Wolf needed to. Do you need to disconnect and come back?
If I were going to show the website, I would need to quit and come back.
But you're going to share your Python program.
You're right. I'm going to need to quit and come back.
Yeah. So you have a few minutes to do that, though. Yeah. Well, he's doing it right now. Okay. So while he's doing that, first up is going to be Justin. And Justin, when you get started with your program, if you could just show us your input file, just so people get an idea what that input file looks like. And is Wolf back? When Wolf gets back, I want him
I am back.
Okay. Let's see. Do you want to describe what the first problem is?
I do want to describe what the first problem is. I'm glad you asked. The first problem is that you are given a file where each line is a corrupted adjustment for the trebuchet that is going to send you to the island in the sky. This string that is a line has letters and numbers in it. And part one of the problem is to find the first digit in the line and the last digit in the line. Stick those two numbers together and then turn that into an int, and that becomes one of the adjustments. You then add up all the adjustments, and the answer to the problem is the sum of all those adjustments. That's part one. In part, and the number is very large. The sample data file they give you is thousands of lines long, or at least hundreds of lines long. And so the number that is the sum of the adjustments is tens of thousands. It's a very big number. Part B of this problem, part two, is the same problem, except that it turns out, and it's the same input file, that some of those lines have numbers in the string, but those numbers are spelled out. ONE, TWO, THREE, etc. At no time does 0 come into this, not as a digit and not as a word. But at least Jim and I both wrote our answers to include 0 in case it does come up. It doesn't in either of our data files, but we wrote it that way anyway.
Well, the instructions specified that the spelled out numbers, it's 1 through 9. So I
Yeah.
wrote mine that way. It can be 0 through 9 in digits or 1 through 9 in spelled out words.
And they didn't tell you what to do if the digits are 0 in the digits part. They only told you what to do when it was 1. They didn't say the 0, 9 means 9. They didn't say that. So in any case, we wrote it how we wrote it, and we will explore that. Is there anything else I need to say?
I think that covers it pretty well.
All right. The first person who's going to present is Justin Triplett. Justin, why don't you take charge?
Hey, yeah. So, yeah, I did misinterpret and I didn't do the second half, but I did do the first half in 2 different languages. So, that's my excuse.
We'll take it.
I will share my screen here. And first, we mentioned we wanted to look at input.
We do want to see
Actually-
input, but we also want to hear about what is Rust.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start with JavaScript first, just because that is the
Okay.
easy one.
Okay.
And I almost gave it away. I think you can see my input right now, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that's what my input looks like. And while we're looking at this, yeah, JavaScript, many people are familiar with, is of course the maybe at one time would just be summed up by calling it the scripting language of the browser. But it is of course much more than that now. And in fact, when we talked about this a while back, the guys here mentioned, I was like, oh yeah, I could do it in JavaScript. And someone's like, oh, you mean working in Node? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess with the file processing, Node is like, you know, it makes sense to think of Node at least, because you might do that on the command line. And that makes sense. But then I was like, you know, maybe not actually. Maybe that's not necessary. And if I do it in
Okay. Yeah. Justin, I'm sorry. Before you go away from this input text file, let's just kind of point out the layout of these files, how there's a digit buried amongst the text.
yeah.
Like on the first line, there's a 1 if you go into about the 10th character, right? And
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is take that 1 and take that 7 on the end and concatenate them together as an integer. So in that case, the value would be 17.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll set it, but yeah, it seems like there's like two variations on the rule. There's the out of all the digits, take the first and the last. And if
Yep.
there's only one digit, like you see
Yep.
here on the fourth line, you
Yep.
want to interpret that as a 2-digit number, the
Well,
same
that's
digit twice.
It's both a first and a last. 4
It
the
is
first.
exactly. It is
I
both
know
the first and
someone
the
who's-
last.
I know someone whose name is like that.
Oh. Yeah, so yeah, and like you could probably think of a system, an algorithm or whatever that might just handle both cases the same way. I did it a little differently, but yeah, so this is the input, and we're using JavaScript, and I'm gonna load some JavaScript here. The fun part of
Yeah.
that is that actually I can make a UI really quickly as well. So I imagine most of us probably didn't do a UI for anything, but this has got some markup, and I even included some Bootstrap CSS so I can make it look decent. But yeah,
Above
so
and
that's what
beyond.
this is there. But yeah, we just have a really simple, somewhat responsive layout to store a little form element and then show the data and the answer. And so yeah, and in fact I can
So you
let's see
just
if I can load it.
paste the file into a text area. Is that or,
So actually what I do is I'm actually using the input element type file.
Type file. Okay. Cool.
And so just like you would on a normal web page when it says, oh, browse your local file system and select the
Sure.
file to upload,
Nice.
I'm doing that, but I'm not uploading it to a server at all. I'm immediately
Nice.
handling it with JavaScript.
Didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, that's a nice, somewhat recent addition. So, in fact, that's this function right here. In my JavaScript here, I kind of set up some constants to give me a reference to the UI so I know where things are and can put things where they belong. And then here, yeah, I have this registered in my DOM content loaded listener to add a listener to whenever that input changes, we run the get input file text and it puts it right in the page just so you can see it easily.
Cool.
And then from there, I have another button, a parse data button, and I have an event on that. When you click on that button, then we fire this other function, which actually does the task. And so maybe we'll switch real quick to the actual UI here. Let me see if I can change screen.
After showing us it working, will you explain
Yeah,
how parse data works?
exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of doing. So we'll see it work first. I think you can now see my Firefox here.
Yep. Yep.
And so, yeah, we got a nice little header here. My input, I can select the file. You probably can't see that, can you?
I see it.
Oh, okay, great. And
Yep.
then, yeah, as soon as I select the file, it loads it right into the browser. It is like 1,000 lines long. And it gives me a parse data button. I click that and I get the
There's
answer
your
right here. It's nice and quick. Pretty simple and straightforward. But and yeah,
And when you plug that number into the Advent of Code website, it would have told you that number is correct.
yeah, it
Assuming
says congratulations or whatever it says.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
let's see.
it unlocks part B of the problem if you want to continue on with that.
Yes, it does then. So let's go back to the code here. I believe that's right. And so yeah, my parse data function is the meat here. And I am grabbing the inner text of that input text element that I made to store all that text. And then I'm also setting up an empty array here of 2-digit integers. And then I take that text and I split it on new lines so that I can read each line one at a time. And then here
Okay.
I'm using a JavaScript for each. This is like a common way to iterate over an array in JavaScript. There are some new ways as well that like match something that's like more Pythonic, or there's other ways to do it. JavaScript is mutating over the ages, and so there's many ways to do different things. But yeah, so I'm just iterating over that. And for each line, I am making another empty array of digits on that line, and then splitting that line on the empty string, which gives me an array of characters. And then for each character, I do this little parse int check. And in JavaScript, it's just as if you were trying to parse it as an int, and it just returns either the integer or a little JavaScript thing we like to call not a number, NaN, and you might have seen it used in various Batman jokes. But yeah, so here I'm just saying, hey, as long as it's not a number, then we can take that integer. We can actually just do the parse int again and push that onto digits on the line. And then here I have my conditional where I say, oh, if that digits on the line is just 1, then we take the first digit and we multiply that by 10 and add the first digit to get that 2-digit integer. And then I put that onto the array of 2-digit integers that I created up here before I started looping through each line. And if there's more than 1, then I take the first and the last and essentially do the same thing, first times 10 plus last, and then push that onto the 2-digit integers. And then here I take the 2-digit integers and use a JavaScript reduce call. And reduce is a fun little JavaScript function. It's very functional programming-esque star that a lot of people tend to love, where you pass it a reducer function, which will take 2 parameters. Here I have partial sum and next. And what I want to do is add the partial sum and the next together. So that reduces this array to the sum. In Python, I'm sure we'll see a sum function, which makes a lot of sense.
That's pretty neat.
But this is like a different way of doing that. Very JavaScripty way. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's a little, maybe a little verbose. Like this doesn't need to be split, as we've discussed. Like handling it this one way should be sufficient. But I also had, while I was developing it, I also had another else to see if there were no digits. Then I wanted to count how many times in the input that happened to see if something was funny, or seeing how much they were trying to trick me. But it actually didn't happen at all, so I ended up removing that. And yeah, I just I like the difference there. I think that's worth noting. But yeah, it's pretty simple. What is this? 71 lines of JavaScript. Sure, I could tighten it up a bit. And you get a UI, so that's kind of fun.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's very
And I learned something. I learned about how to use that reduce. And,
Yeah, that's a good one.
And how to handle that uploaded file.
Yeah, the uploaded file is fun. Yeah, it's this get input file text function I wrote here on the change event for that input element. The target refers to that element, and it has an array of files. And I just grab that first file, create a file reader object, And then yeah, do this little fun dance here where set the readers on load attribute to the function that is, hey, set those results and put it in this element, and then go ahead and do that. So
That's pretty neat.
yeah, JavaScript is it does have classes now, as we can kind of see here. This looks like a
Yep.
very class-like thing. But it was originally much more functional, and not object-oriented, and that's kind of like we have the roots of that in here with reduce. But even still, now that it has classes, they're actually just implemented as functions, as far as I understand. So it does this interesting way of arranging them, in that you create a constant object that is a function that returns some data and some other functions, and that's your object. You'll note here that I have a lot of const declarations in JavaScript. That has a slightly interesting behavior. If you assign a constant name to an integer, you're never going to be able to change that integer like you would expect. It's constant. However, when you assign it to an object, like a function or whatever, you can kind of continue to change that function, but you're only changing that function. You can never reset that name to another function or something like that, or another object. So you end up seeing them in places like here: constant 2-digit integers, empty list, empty array, and then I add things to it. And then, well, indeed, this doesn't ever change. It is always this array. It just happens to get bigger. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions on the JavaScript or HTML?
What was that random string? Go up to the top again. Your HTML stuff.
Integrity check for Bootstrap.
Okay.
So yeah, this whole thing is just download Bootstrap from the CDN.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that makes sure that your Bootstrap is what you think it is.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. That is really neat.
Well, yeah, if there's no
Nice
questions on that, we'll switch over to Rust.
That's a little different, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Rust is a little different. I did not make a UI in Rust, although I'm interested in it, and I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm interested. I'm just learning Rust. I don't get to use it on a daily basis yet, anything like that. But it is pretty interesting, and I found this to be not too difficult. If you know any other systems language, you're going to feel mostly comfortable with this stuff. Although Rust is just a little pickier about some things. Let's see if we can share. I believe you can now see my other Firefox. And I'm using Replit, replit.com. Many of you might have run into that before. Pretty nice. It's a really convenient online platform with like a free sign up. And of course, there's paid upgrades. You basically get a VM. I have like a bash shell here with some junk in it. And they have it's been around for maybe even like 10 years now. It's been a little while. And at first it wasn't quite like this, but it's always been open a REPL, read, evaluate, print loop for whatever language you want. And I usually find it convenient for something like PHP or something like that, where I don't want to have that set up on my computer. And if I have to like test something, it's just really easy to like open that up, and I can just write a single line of something and test it, instead of, an environment and a page and all these other things. And yeah, it's super convenient for Rust as well. I don't have Rust set up on this computer, but here it is on Replit. So yeah, Rust is a systems level language. It is compiled. It is particularly, it is memory safe, and it has a very, very picky compiler that will complain about absolutely anything it can and tell you and demand that you fix it. And it's actually really good at that. It's got really good error messages. I mean, you know, you still need to learn the language and what it means, but they've focused a lot on making that a really helpful experience, right? I mean, I remember learning C a long, long time ago, and yeah, you know, the error message was just like, okay, well, here's the thing that you look for in your book that you're reading or whatever, and maybe that'll tell you some more information.
Mhm.
But yeah, but no, Rust is really great, and it's pretty interesting. And we're gonna run this real quick. It has a nice little run button that auto compiles, and indeed, I get the same number that I was getting in JavaScript.
It's
I've
the
had
same data file.
the same data file for me. Yeah, so yeah, and actually I can use bash to like actually compile it manually, and maybe actually if I just like create an error here and then click run, you can see it actually already tried to do that. And here's a nice Rust compiler error. Expected to find a semicolon, and instead it found the next line. And yeah, they're color coded. It's like telling you right where to look. In this case, it's a pretty easy error to fix, and it knows how to make the suggestion there. But yeah, it's pretty great. So yeah, it works. That's nice. We can like dive into the code a little bit. So there are some like standard library devices that I'm using here. There's a file struct here, as well as a buffer reader, and there's a struct and a protocol or a trait in Rust that you also want as well. And I'm also grabbing all of the IO package module. I forget what they call them there.
Justin, are you able to zoom in there a little bit?
Yeah, I think I probably can. Sorry if that was
Thanks.
too small. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, we can get rid of that. There we go. Yeah, so hopefully that's good. But yeah, so I just have a single main function, just like you would in C or C++ kind of. And here, of course, we type annotate it. Rust is really interesting because it's got this result type that is kind of like always giving you the thing that you expect or an error. And so you've got this really native built-in way to handle errors where you can always return a result, the type that you expect or an error type. And so that's really cool. But yeah, I basically am using the same algorithm here. In fact, I wrote this one first a while ago, and then I just kind of re-implemented it in JavaScript. So yeah, just using that file struct and opening this input text file, which is just you know, in the same folder with everything else. Oops, it's a little easier to read there. And then we are creating a vector of 2-digit integers. Honestly, I don't even know the convention for variables. I went with snake case because I love Python. I find that very readable. But yeah, so we're creating a vector, just like an array. You know, this one can grow. You can also set it to a specific size, I believe, but it's not what we're doing here. Yeah, we have let and MUT for mutate. Replit, it's got this great documentation actually, which is really nice. And then so now that we have an empty array, we can use the reader that we defined up here and iterate over the lines. And so yeah, that's the built-in method that it's got there. So we can read the line. And so actually, I forgot that this was one of the places I could have done a little bit better in terms of Rust. So I have a question mark here because this isn't guaranteeing that it returns a line. It returns a result, and so there could be an error message if there's not a line there. So that's what this question mark is kind of saying. It's demanding. If I don't have a question mark there, pretty sure Rust will not compile this. Let's double check. Yeah, no, it's nice. So whoa. This lines function returns a line theoretically, but sometimes it can return an error. And you should either handle that explicitly or YOLO and just put a question mark there. Because theoretically you're going to get a line.
Is that like an optional variable?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Swift?
Essentially, that's like how we're handling an optional there.
Okay.
I've also seen. I should have kept my notes on it, but there is another way that can manifest. But I fixed that one, and we'll run into it in a little bit. But yeah, that's the idea.
Are there exceptions in Rust?
You know what? I guess I'm not completely sure. I don't believe so.
Interesting.
I'm gonna guess not. Maybe someone can Google it and correct me. But like, because of the way that it's compiled and because of the way that it's kind of demanding that you handle these things, I'm gonna guess that
No,
they
it
are
doesn't.
not.
It does not have exceptions.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I
So
was wondering. Your reader dot lines up above,
yeah.
their reader dot lines, that one would return what either a set of lines or nothing if there was nothing to read.
Yeah. So
And
let's see.
so wouldn't they, for line and reader dot lines, wouldn't that for loop just pass with no loops if in case there was no lines in reader dot lines? Well,
But
why
if
would he
there's
need-
a line, if there are lines, but something inside that file isn't a line, then there's an error for that line.
You mean like if it's binary or something?
I think actually the case that maybe Wolf was referring to also is that at the end of the lines, if you are processing it, this is I believe returning them asynchronously. So each string return will not have a new line byte. Yeah.
It'll
So-
chop that off the end.
Yeah, so at the very end, it's also going to stop returning lines. It doesn't give me an error message, so
Okay.
that seems to be working as is. I think that this is a convention here because you can also iterate in a different way, right? I could probably have turned this into an array and then did more of like a C style loop where we define our index and motions. But yeah, so I'm thinking that's convention there. But yeah, like we did up here, we have the 2-digit integers, and now we have the digits online. And then here we test each character on that line. So just like we did reader.lines, now we do line.cars to get a character. And the character does have an is-digit test. So that's really convenient. And we just push those onto the digits online. And
So is that a base 10 digit?
Yes, that is what that is. That is the radix.
So if you had said 16, it could be A, B, C, D, or E.
Yeah, exactly.
Or F. Yeah.
Yeah, A, B, C, D, E, F. But yeah, since we're working at base 10 here, put that there, and that works out. So yeah, nice, really simple, tight loop for determining which characters are digits and then putting them somewhere.
Mhm.
And then here we're gonna actually go through those and test them. And depending on the length, we test it differently, just like I did before. And doing it in the opposite way here, there are two or more, greater than or equal to two, the length is, then we want to call two digit, just like we did is digit.
Mhm. Mhm.
We can do two digit. And so two digit is another where it takes the radix just like is digit is, and it returns an optional option U32, which makes sense here. And so now here is where I'm handling that explicitly. I'm using a match statement. And so I'm saying that there's going to be two cases here. When I call two digit on, you know, the first digit of that array, that vector, two things could happen. I could either get a digit or not. And in that case, what do I want to do when I don't get a digit? And so you could do all sorts of things. You could call some other function or something, perhaps. But here, I thought it made sense to just use 0 since we're going to be summing these values. It doesn't matter to me.
Mhm.
And particularly with the way that the rules were set up, that seems to work out pretty well. And yeah, so in both those cases where I want to call two digit, because I have the certainty that, look, I just checked to see if it was a digit up here. I am very confident that we're getting a digit. And
Mhm.
yet two digit is an optional. So I have to handle the case that
Mhm.
where it's not. I could have also instead, uh, yeah, what is that? There's a method that you can call on the optional. I wonder if I can find it just from looking here in these panics. Passing a large radix causes a panic. Interesting. I wonder what the 16 the maximum? Oh, no longer 36. Base 36 is all that's supported.
Okay.
Uh, that's a good thing to know, but luckily we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, just like in JavaScript, doing the same thing. Take that first digit, multiply it by 10, add the last digit. And then in the case where there's only one digit, we just do that two digit once. And we take that one digit, multiply it by 10, and add it to itself. And then we push those onto the vector of two digit integers. And then here, instead of the reducer that we had in JavaScript, we can call iter.sum. So this is a trait in JavaScript, in Rust, that I think like languages like Swift and a few others will call a protocol. And yeah, so that's how we get a nice solid U32, unsigned 32-bit integer called sum. And then we print it out with print line. And then we returned okay because there was no problem.
Ah,
So is
interesting
Rust one
language.
of those languages that returns the last expression? You don't need to say the word return.
I don't know if it does that in every case. That's a good question. It might. That's a Does Rust always return the last expression? What? That's not what I wanted. Man. Duck duck. Oh. Yeah, it
Interesting.
seems like, yeah. Explicit return is really knowing
Yeah.
enclosures. Yeah, that's true. Uh, yeah. So yeah, return X is an expression. What is the value? Interesting. Yeah, so it still has a return that you can make explicit, but looks like that's what it's doing.
It just returns the value of the result of the last expression.
Yeah.
Cool. Like Perl.
Oh, nice. Well, that's probably a good segue, unless anybody has any
Yeah.
questions on Rust.
Can you just show the top of that data file again?
Oh, yeah.
If people, remember his starts with TMM. When I start out on mine, I'll show you my data file, and we'll show that they are indeed different.
Cool. All right, I'll stop sharing now.
That's
Quick
really
question
good,
for you.
Justin.
Thank you.
Sorry. Hey, quick question on Rust. It's, I know you said memory safe. I hear a lot about type safety. How difficult would it be in Rust to in your vector of numbers, instead of doing the first number times 10 plus a second number, just convert them both to strings, concatenate them, and then turn it into an int?
Oh yeah, interesting. Like kind of like you might do in JavaScript. Yeah, you could say, okay, just concatenate these two strings and then
Yeah.
Kind of like what I
parse
did in
that.
Perl.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's a good question. It seems like it shouldn't be too hard. You can concatenate the string, no problem. And then the is digit should still work in base 10. Yeah, that should totally work. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Great question.
Thanks, Justin. That was great.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so let me see if I can share my screen now. Let's see. Share screen. I'm going to share my whole desktop here. Is it sharing? Oh, yeah, I guess it is.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to increase font sizes so you all can see things better. Is that big enough for you guys to see? Or shall I go bigger? I can go bigger. Okay. I've got I'm doing Perl, and I wrote both part A and part B. And over here's my data file, and you can see it is indeed different from Justin's. In case there was any question, and I've got 1,000 lines of input, exactly 1,000 lines. Okay, so let's get into 1A. Okay, here is my Perl program. I do a lot of Perl programming, so it was kind of a natural for me to solve this problem using Perl. Perl's been around since the late 80s. At one point, it was called the duct tape of the internet. I don't know if they refer to it that way anymore. Most people these days would not choose Perl for a new programming project, and I probably wouldn't either if I didn't have so much of it. My entire system that I've written for managing medical practices is, between Perl, JavaScript, and SQL, pretty much what it is.
Jim,
yes.
Question: do you get into the object-oriented features of Perl, or do you just go for the? Okay.
Yep.
Because I was found
I'm not using. I'm not using, like, there's a new one, Corinne or Corinna. There's various new features of Perl that are making it more object-oriented, but I do use the object-oriented features of Perl 5, and we use that quite a bit. So yes. So with Perl, it's an interpreted language. It's a scripting language. You don't compile it. You just set up at the top. You put the name of your interpreter with a hash pling, and I pass the -W, so it warns me of things like variables that don't have a value when I run it. So I'll get undefined variable warnings and things like that. I always include that in my programs. And I always include strict, because if I don't, then I don't have to declare my variables with my, which is to me good, because I don't want to accidentally use the wrong name for a variable. Right? If I didn't pre-declare it with a my, I would get an error. I wouldn't get an error if I didn't have the use strict. So all of my programs, even the simplest programs, I always have the -W and the use strict.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
A little bit larger
Yes, please.
font. How's that?
That's better.
I'm going to
Thanks.
set my numbers on so you can see where I am in the file if I scroll down. Although it is all fitting, so that's good. Is that big enough for everybody? I hope it is. Okay. So I'm doing kind of I'm starting out kind of the same way Justin did with Rust. I open the file. In my case, I call it data.txt. If I die on the if I fail to open it, if the file didn't exist, I'll die with a failed open, and that'll give me the reason for the failed open, like file not found, or no permission, or whatever the error is. Typically, file not found or no permission would be it. I start by setting my total to 0. And at the end, I print out my total. That's down here. Okay. Now I iterate through the lines of the file. This little operator here will read in the file and give it to me one line at a time. So as in my loop, $line is each line of the file. I start by initializing my first digit and my last digit to the empty string. Then I split my line into characters. This little regex here will and the split command will split it into a bunch of characters, and the for each will iterate through those characters. I check to see if that character is a digit. Here's my regular expression. I'm using the match operator. If that character is a digit, so 0 through 9, it's going to fall into this if statement. If I don't yet have a first digit, if my first digit is empty, then I set my first digit equal to that character. And I always set my last digit equal to the current character. And then I just, from here, this is my loop. I'll highlight all this code. That's my loop right there. And it'll loop through every character in the line. And then my outer loop is every line in the file. It'll loop through that. Now, when I'm done with the line, when I'm done with this part, then I concatenate my first digit and my last digit into a string, into my number string. Okay. Then I turn it into an integer. Kind of like you do in JavaScript, you use parse int. In Rust, I forgot what the command was that Justin was using to convert his character into a number. But I convert my whole string, my first digit and last digit concatenated together. I convert that to an integer, and I add it onto my total using the plus equals operator. That's kind of like C, right? You got plus equals. Perl has it too. So I just keep accumulating this total. When I'm all done with my loop down here, when I run out of lines in my file, I close my file and I print my total. And I'll show you. When I run it, 1A, there's my total. It's different than Justin's total because my input data was different than Justin. And when Wolf runs his in Python, it'll be different yet again. So any questions about the 1A problem, the first version? Anybody?
I just had a thought. I gotta say, like,
Yeah.
as someone who's very familiar with the Perl joke that it's a read-only language or write-only language, actually, I gotta say that I feel like this is super readable. I'm surprised.
Well,
I'm
thanks.
not actually familiar with Perl, and so I've like heard the horror stories, but then I see
Well,
this, and this looks super
this
simple
is
and great.
this is the way I write Perl, and this is how I'm successful at writing Perl. If I, to me, the joke is Perl looks like line noise.
Yeah,
In fact, if you have, if you all remember modems before error correction, 9 times out of 10, whatever that line noise spits out from a modem is valid Perl. This is how I write it, and this is how I write C. This is how I write my JavaScript. I try to make it clear. I don't always have this many comments in it.
yeah.
I did that just for this exercise. But I try to comment what I'm doing if there's something that's confusing. So yeah, you can write good looking Perl, I believe.
Yeah, I was thinking that like my thought was that like even without these comments, I could read it quite easily.
You could figure it out. Well, thanks.
It's like similar to Python or JavaScript or anything, really.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I don't know if any of you guys use awk. In fact, I was joking with Wolf the other day. I was thinking of solving this problem with awk.
Nice.
My awk would look a lot like this, even though awk is a whole different language. In fact, I should do that yet. But anyway, that's the first version. Anybody else have any questions or anything about it? Everybody ready to jump in and start writing Perl? Okay, so let's move on to 1B.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, 1B is it's kind of in a way simpler. This was my second iteration at writing the program, and I decided to go crazy with regular expressions. So again, in fact, this one I didn't do the -W. Somehow I missed that. Because remember, I said I always do -W. So I use strict. I open the data file. I set my counter to 0. This time, I'm taking the line, and I'm using the match operator to look for this regular expression. Okay. Well, for one of these patterns, the whole thing in between slashes is a regular expression. Okay. So I'm looking for one of these patterns, and it could be a digit. It could be the string 0, 1, 2, 3. In fact, remember Wolf and I talked, you should take the 0 out of there because it's clear in the specifications for the program that the valid strings are 1 through 9. So, so I'm using a regular expression looking at the beginning of the line for any characters, and this is really important right here. Non-greedy. That little question mark there says this pattern is non-greedy. It means basically the shortest pattern possible, followed by one of these things. From here to here. Okay, followed by a digit or the words 1 through 9. Okay, and the match operator, because I'm using this capture group here, this parenthesis, and this it ends with this one. Let me just put my cursor on it. That's the beginning of my capture group. That's the end of my capture group.
Is that
this
sensitive?
This is I'm not doing case insensitive. I could have added I there. Yeah. Right, to make the regular expression case insensitive. I don't know if I don't think the data has any uppercase in it, and the specifications said 1 through 9, and they showed it in lowercase, so I wasn't even thinking about upper or lowercase. I just assumed lower. So my capture group is one of these things, and this $1 is going to be the value of the capture group. So it's going to give me the value of one of these. Okay. Skipping that white space at the noise at the beginning. And it's going to give me the first thing on the line that matches one of these. So if it's my data file, the first thing on the line that matches is the 2. All right. So when I get my get digit function is going to pass 2 to that. And if we go down to my get digit function or subroutine, I'm using an anonymous hash. That's this guy here, where my key is the string I passed in, and my value is the value of the hash. So if we pass in a 2, it's going to give me the string 2, just the digit 2. If we were to pass in line 3 of my data, the first thing that's going to match is this word 5, F-I-V-E. So if we pass that into get dig, it's going to do that. So it's going to return 5. And here is where we return that value. Okay, so that's how I handled the lookup table for 0 through 9 and the words 1 through 9. And that's how it returns the value. So let's go back up here. Well, let me turn on numbers again. Let's go back up here. So that's how I get the first digit, because my regular expression is anchored at the beginning of the line. I do something similar to get the last digit, only this time I'm not anchored at the beginning of the line. I'm looking for as many characters as I can possibly find, followed by one of these, followed by some characters, non-greedy, at the end of the line. Okay, so I'm going to find one of these, either a digit or one of these words at the end of the line. And I'm going to pass whatever was found in the capture group to my get dig subroutine, and it's going to return the last digit. And what happened here? Somehow I don't need that in there. I think I inadvertently added that in. So first dig concatenated with last dig is going to give me a number string. I'm going to convert it to an integer. I'm going to add it to my total. I'm done with my loop. I'm going to close my file. I'm going to print my total. See that? So let's run that one. Same result. Let's run 1A again. It's a different result because we're looking for numbers spelled out now. But both of these match what the Advent of Code website said. So let's go back in. Any questions about this code? How I did this?
Yeah, right down there where you say my number string equals first dig, line 16.
16.
And 16, can you explain again how 16 and 18 work?
Well, 16 is gonna take my first. If we look at my first line of input, my first dig is going to be a 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a string. My first dig is a 2. My second dig is a 9. So it's gonna concatenate 2 and 9 to give me 29. It's gonna give me a string. It's basically 2 and 9 equals the string 29.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Make that a comment. Okay. And then int is a function in Perl.
Well,
that's going to take this string and interpret it as an integer. So it's going to take my string of 29, of 29, and interpret it as an integer. And so it's going to add the numeric value, the integer value 29 to my total. And that's what this plus equals does. It would be just, I could have said $total equals $total.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus I mean, I could do it this way, $num stir, right? I could do that, or I could have done my dollar num equals int $num stir, and
Mhm.
then
Okay.
if I wanted to spell it out, right? But
Yeah. All
Right.
right. Thank you.
this here is the long way of doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. C, you can do that. PHP, you can do that. I won't speak about Python or any of the others because I don't use those. So basically, okay, I'm going to add this example with that. Now that's in my code. Okay. Anybody have any questions about this anonymous hash that I used? I think Python calls it a dictionary. It's just a little key
Yeah.
value thing, right? Where my
Yeah. I kind of had a question. Actually, I had a question immediately, and I think I answered it myself. Is that you said it was, yeah, an anonymous hash. And I looked at it and, like, not looking carefully, I thought, what do you mean? You're giving it the name value. Why is it called anonymous?
Oh,
But
that's
I
a
see
reference. This is a reference to an
exactly.
anonymous hash. Okay.
Yeah.
The other
So
the other way.
your hash is anonymous and it returns, you define that it returns a string, but then you're like, you're giving it a reference instead of
Let's see, how do you? I always write references to hashes, but I think I could have done, and I could spell, put it all out on one line.
yeah. Yeah, like in Python, it's a literal, right? We would call it like a literal dictionary instead of an
Yeah,
anonymous hash.
sure,
But
sure.
yeah, that's super cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna actually implement this way, right? This would be not an anonymous hash. This would be in this case, it's a reference to an anonymous hash. Okay, this
Yeah.
way is a hash with this value.
Yeah.
What did I just do? Okay.
Yeah.
What did I just do? Okay.
Oh, you just
Yeah. Okay. So now, if I wanted to get I could return. Let's see. I would return value sub $str. Okay. If I forget all this stuff, pretend that's not there. Okay. That's how I would get all these are scalar values. So that's how I get the scalar value out of a hash.
nice. Yeah.
I'm doing a reference to a hash instead, so I have to use this syntax.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Okay.
I mean, almost
Yeah.
in a way, it's like using instead, like, you doing in Python, you would write the literal, or you could call it the dictionary function. In this case, you have like, it's essentially like built in that you can do an anonymous function instead of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
constructor.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Cool.
Okay. You can have a reference to anything. It could be a function or a subroutine, a sub in Perl speak. You can do a reference. I always like to use references to hashes and references to arrays instead of actual hashes and arrays, just because it's much easier to pass a reference to a subroutine than it is to pass the whole damn array to a subroutine. So yeah.
That's
Any
great.
other questions?
What does the shift do?
When I call get dig and I pass an argument, those arguments are on the call stack, and like when you have a subroutine, my sub, it gets passed to it an array called @_ Okay. So when I'm doing a shift, I'm actually shifting that array. So when you call a subroutine, all the arguments get stuck together and passed as an array called @_ So I can retrieve that value inside inside this subroutine by shifting the value off of that array. That's how I get it here. You don't have named in Perl. You don't have named arguments like you would in a lot of other languages. There's no strict type checking on your arguments. It's kind of a free for all. It's one of the things I really don't like about Perl is the fact that there isn't strict type checking. Where Rust is going to check the type of every argument you pass to a subroutine, and it's going to make sure that the value returned for the subroutine is the type you said it was going to be. And if it's not, that's going to blow up.
The same guy.
Thanks, Jim.
I'm sorry, what was that? Somebody say something?
No, but I have a question. Do you use non-greedy regex by default, or did you have to, like I did, realize that if you have TWONE, it's going to capture group 2 and then leave off and not capture 1 after that? So
do I use non-greedy by default? No, I don't. It just depends on what I'm trying to find in my data. In this case, I had to because I want to skip all the stuff that doesn't look like one of those things, and I don't want to skip anything more because by default, regular expressions in Perl are greedy. If I didn't have this question mark on there, it would find the last one on the line, not the first one.
Okay.
And then
So
this
maybe a
one,
different
because because I actually have 2 places where I'm looking for something other than my characters, I had to make this one non-greedy. So, did you have more to your question?
No, I guess maybe kind of sort of. So going back to, like, if you have TWONE, if your capture group catches the first TWO for 2, is it like a by default a 0? Was that a 0 width capture group where it'll go through each digit, or after it hits TWO, does it start at the NE and not capture 1? If you have 2 words,
you know what? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
What happens is it captures the 2, the TWO, and then it stops searching. So it never sees the ONE that trails after that 2. That's what happens.
Even without the non-greedy modifier?
No. If it has the greedy modifier, then it goes on to check and it sees, even though it overlaps, it sees ONE and it says, oh, that's the match. If
Because
ONE
it's
is
greedy.
the last one.
Yeah.
Because it's greedy.
Yeah. And if there's an
Thank you.
ONE further out on the line, it's going to find that instead. If we're not doing if I don't specify non-greedy.
But it only wants the first one anyhow, so it doesn't matter.
If
Well,
you
unless
use
the other
the
one, the
non,
next one was but you find the last one in the second thing. So it don't, since it only finds it only matters only the first one matters, that would still work.
Yeah, theoretically it would work if I didn't have this on the end of the second one. Because the greedy any character would scan all the way to the end and then find this. Let's try it and see if that's true. If I take that off,
Well,
yeah,
you don't
still
know
gives
if
me
your
the same
data.
result.
You don't know if your data has anything in it that would produce that or not.
it happens that the regular expression without the trailing non-greedy ...
Oh,
is correct.
Actually, I think you can
Yeah.
see it on line 38 in the input. I just spotted that 9-8 shares an E.
Right. No, they
Is
don't
that
share
what-
any. There's
Oh,
two
I'm
E's.
sorry. Yeah, I can't see.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it might be there. And I like to be explicit. That's why I have this guy here to really show that I'm looking for the latest one I can find. Regular expressions are the bomb.
Yeah. It's a very
I love
elegant
it.
solution, Jim.
Yeah.
Can you go
Thank
back to the first solution?
Sure.
So this is the one I tried, and I'm very close to what you do, but I don't look for each character. I just use a substitution to say, throw away everything that's not a digit.
Mm.
And then I look with a regular expression, get the first digit in the string and one for
Yeah.
the last digit in the string.
Yeah. You know what? I could have solved it. Let's go back to 1B. I could have solved problem 1 by just not having any of this stuff.
Right.
Right. I mean, I think that's kind of a nicer solution. I could have just done my regular expression like this. And that would just find the first digit on the line. And then, of course, my other regular expression would be, same thing, find the last digit on the line. That's kind of a nice, elegant way to do it.
Hmm.
But, right, let's just for kicks, let's see if I get the same result. 1B, 1A. Look at that.
Wow. Nice.
Nice.
I after writing 1B, I kind of like this solution better because I don't have to loop through. I don't have to split the line into characters and then loop through it. The regular expression is doing that for me. In the end, I don't know which one would perform better. I would guess that this one would perform better than me splitting the line and looking at each character on the line. But performance wasn't one of the criterion for this program, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was thinking about my solution as well, in that I noticed my strategy is much more memory intensive because I want to like
Okay, you're saving an array. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I start by saying I want to like kind of explode every detail of the problem so that I can
Sure.
debug at any point and I can
Sure.
investigate what I'm
Sure.
doing wrong on
Sure.
that conceptual level. But yeah,
Sure.
it spends more memory, it spends more cycles, and where like sometimes many programs can just be a regex. And
Yeah.
you can't dive into your regex too easily to debug what hit what. I mean, that's just writing a bunch more code debugging that
Sure.
regex.
Sure.
But like, but yeah, the performance
Sure.
I'm sure is better.
I
That's cool.
I deal with sometimes very large sets of data. Like I've got my database is 3.2 terabytes.
Ooh.
Sometimes this is a database for one of my clients.
Is that
Sometimes
in
I have
Postgres?
to deal with, sometimes I
Nice.
have to deal with very, very large things of data. So I look for ways to do it where I won't run out of memory on the machine.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's important.
It's just that's my mindset. Try not to, like, I could have built an array from my data and then, like you did, then
Yeah.
look at the array and see. And for debugging, that's a nice way to go. But this is kind of the way I think.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah. So any more questions before we move on to Wolf and his Python adventure? No? Wolf, are you ready?
I am ready.
And the most important thing to know is that Jim and I did not share any information about solving this problem.
He
and-
he pointed
in-
me at the website, and that's the only collaboration we had.
And in
Because he
fact,
turned me on to this.
I actually wrote mine before I even told Jim about it. But you will see that Jim's solution and my solution are very similar. So let me share my screen.
And while he's setting that up, I got the opportunity to see Dave's solution, and Dave's solutions shares some common stuff with mine, even though he wrote his in Swift. It's not exactly the same way that I did it, but he followed a lot of the same logic. Okay,
So I
here we are
solved-
in Python.
I solved both problems in the same file.
You're probably going to need to increase your font size.
Let me figure out the best way to do that.
Option plus, does that not do it?
It's Command plus on
Command
on the
plus, yeah.
Mac. That's
I looked down and I looked
yeah.
at the key and it says command, and I said option.
Yeah, you said well, option's right next to it.
I don't know about MacVim though. That might be.
Oh yeah. Crazy MacVim.
I
I
thought
think
it
it was just
Control plus,
in the terminal. Command plus would
before.
work, but
Command equals makes it bigger. Whoops,
You
what
mu-
happened?
oh, same thing.
No.
You must have a very large monitor resolution there.
I do.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay,
What are you hitting? What
So-
did you hit to do that?
command equals.
Okay.
Just like it said in the
Yeah. Okay.
edit menu under
Cool.
font. Okay, so the way I solved this is I'm going to start at the outside, and that means starting with main. So I didn't name the file on a parameter as a parameter to the function. I actually put the file name in the program. And then I only have one function to run both phase 1 and phase 2. And that is extract sum of calibration values. But I pass in the extractor, and the extractor is different for phase 1 and phase 2. The extractor, you see, I actually provide a static type here for the extractor. It's a callable that takes an array of strings and an int. It returns an int. It takes a string and it returns an int. That's what callable says right here. This first array are the parameters, and then finally is the return value. So I have two of these extractors. The first one is called extract calibration from a line of text, and it takes one line and returns the calibration from that line. It's a pretty simple function that does not use regular expressions. I wanted to write the simplest thing I reasonably could, and it turns out isDigit is faster than a regular expression. So I get a line. That's what gets passed into this function. If we look at the extract sum of the values, I open the file name, and for line in F, that returns one line at a time in this loop. It calls the extractor and adds that into the sum. I did not call sum the function, which Justin implied I might, because then I would have had to save all the values in an array. Instead, I add them in one at a time.
That's
So
great.
the first function looks at each character in the line, because a string is an iterable. So when you say for character in line, it will get one character of the line at a time until you have gone through all of them, or you say break. And I just look for the first one that's a digit. And if I find a digit, if that is true, then the first digit gets that character. And then I immediately break out. So as soon as I find a digit, I give up looking for the first one. This magic right here is called a slice. In Python, a slice lets you get a subarray out of any array you've got, any list that you have. A slice has 3 parts to it, but you can supply 1, 2, or 3 of them. Before the first colon is where to start in the slice. If you don't supply anything, it starts the beginning of the string. Before the second colon is the end of the slice, non-inclusive. If you don't supply anything, it's the end of the string. And finally, after the second colon is the step. That is how much to advance each time you take this slice. And when you say -1, what happens is it starts at the end of the string and goes backwards 1 character at a time. So this first loop looks at the characters in the forward order, and this second loop looks at the characters in the backward order and does exactly the same thing as the first loop. It just finds the first one that's a digit, saves it, and breaks. So if your string only has 1 digit in it, these 2 loops find the same digit, and it will be stored as both first digit and second digit. If it never finds anything, and this doesn't happen in any of the data files, then it returns 0 as its result. Remember, I'm returning the calibration value, which is those 2 digits together as an int. And the way I do that is I make a string. An F string lets you put in curly braces a Python expression which you want to be in the string. So this string is the first digit and the second digit. And I just say int on that, and that's what I return. So if it found a 9, and 9 was the only digit in the string, then the first loop finds the 9 and gives up, and the second loop finds the 9 and gives up, and the string is 99, and int of 99 is 99. So that's how the first extractor works. And then when I call extract sum of calibration values for the phase 1 result, I pass in the first extraction function and the data file. I pass in the first extraction function, and that adds up just the digits in this sum and returns the sum. And then it puts it in phase 1 result, and I just print a string with that result. The second extractor is a little harder. It uses regular expressions, of course. I save my regular expressions up front. To use a regular expression in Python, you have to include the RE module. And usually what I do is I compile the expression first. Now, technically, you don't have to compile it. You could just pass in the expression as long as it's a pattern. And it will cache at least a couple of those. So you don't have to compile, but I always do. So the first digit is exactly the same way Jim did it, except I don't have anything at the end, which is, and I put my digits in. I could have said a special slash expression, an escape. I think I can say escape D /D to mean a digit, but I made a character range. to express the digits, and I put my digits at the end. It doesn't matter because everything in this group is of equal value. It will find, since I said non-greedy, it will find the very first one of anything in this group. So it'll find the very first 2 if that's the first thing, or it'll find the very first digit 2 if that's the first thing. I have 2 regular expressions because I have one to find the first digit and I have one to find the second digit. The only difference is to find the first digit, I use a non-greedy expression, so it won't go on after it finds the very first one. And to find the second digit, I want to find the longest string of stuff that doesn't match, followed by the very last match. And then I have a dictionary that turns the numbers, the word numbers 1 to 9 into the digits 1 to 9, both as strings, just like Jim does, except I don't bother to turn the digits into themselves. Instead, what I do is I match the line, that's the first digit, and then the possible first digit is group 0. Remember, both of my patterns have parentheses in them. Parentheses mean a capture group in a regular expression. So the possible first digit is me calling match with the first digit regular expression that I've compiled, and then looking at the very first group. They start at 0, so 0 is the very first group. And if digit for word is my dictionary, if it is a word and that word is a key in my digit for word dictionary, then the first digit is the value stored in the dictionary at that key. Otherwise, if it's a match, and it must be a match because the group is none, if it didn't match, I only had to test first digit here. I didn't have to test second digit because first and second would be the same if there was only one. And if first digit is none, that means there's none of them, they'd both be none. So I could have skipped checking second digit, but I wanted this to be explicit. This never happens anywhere in the data file. So I didn't even have to say this, but I did. If it's not a word, and that word would be found in the dictionary turning words into digits, then it must be a regular number digit. And that, because of that, first digit is just the possible first digit. It just gets it, there's no conversion. And finally, I do exactly the same thing I do in the first function, which is I make an F string that concatenates the 2 digits together, and I turn that into an int. I pass in phase 2, I pass in the extractor for phase 2 and the same data file, and I do a print that prints out the phase 2 result. So if I run this function and say Python main.py, it prints out both the phase 1 and phase 2 answers. You'll see that in a couple of places, like the extractor, I provide a static type. In other places where it's green, that text is not in the file. Vim is showing me this because I have a Python plugin installed. And so it shows me the static type of that variable. And so that's it. It's actually pretty simple. Can I answer any questions about it?
Yeah,
I
hey,
did- oh, go ahead.
I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I looked and I think that I have a really weird edge case in my file where, again, at the last thing, so the way that I understand it after having trouble and not being able to understand it is in Python, you have to use a negative look ahead if you have an edge case like I was talking about earlier, where if the last word is, let's say, 8, but there's ON before that, so ONE. So my understanding is, I guess if you get a chance, find one of your last lines that has 8 or 1, and then put, ON before 8 or TW before 1, and see if you get the same number or not. Because, like I said, I must have an edge case, but I spent a lot of time figuring out about negative look aheads and zero width capture groups because it just was not clicking for me, like as far as the number matching up with Advent of Code.
I hear what you're saying. But I know a lot about regular expressions, and I can tell you that when you look for the longest string first, followed by one of those strings in the capture group, you will find the right thing.
Yeah, I used a similar original expression, and I had a TWONE at the end, and it'll get the 1 out of there. And
so what you're describing is an edge case, but this regular expression explicitly handles that edge case. Any other questions?
Yeah, line 71 there. Would you explain again? You have a Vim plugin that puts it in green, and what does literal mean and the green color?
Literal means that I've assigned a value to it, and it's not saying that's an int or a float or a double or anything like that. It's saying I supplied the value 0. That's what literal means. And some will be used as an int. It doesn't actually check these types at runtime. To actually check them, I have to say mypi on main.py. And I don't have mypi installed. So that's unfortunate. Oh, because I'm not using the, let me do this. I want to say poetry run mypi on main.py. Nope, I don't have mypi installed. I would have to install mypi. Let's do that. Pip install mypi.
While you're doing that, I look at my my data file. I've got 18 instances of TWONE in my data file.
Wow.
So it would match either the word 2 or the word 1.
Depending on whether you use non-greedy or not.
Sure. And in my case, my regular expressions are finding the correct thing. And I know that because I'm getting the correct answer that the Advent of Code is accepting. When you run the Advent of Code, you take that number that your program spits out and you type it in or paste it into the Advent of Code website, and it'll spit back either correct or not correct.
I've got a quick question for Wolf. Where, on that same line 71, where it has, you said that's kind of like auto annotated. That's not even in the file. It's just an illusion. That's right.
That's what the green text is. Yes.
Yeah. So could you? I mean, of course, you could just like write what it's telling you to write, and then that would be a valid type, right?
I could, or I could have said sum:\int.
Yeah, 0. That was my question. I was like, could you also just do it as an int explicitly? Yeah, that's great.
And int is better than literal 0.
Yeah.
Because literal 0 only describes this value, whereas int describes what I want to use sum for.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of like a limitation of static analysis, is that it's like, well, if there's multiple types and you have a literal here, I think it probably has to just say, oh, I know it's a literal, If you do 0.0, will it auto annotate as a float?
It will.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Cool.
Who's doing that? Vim?
yeah, I'm using a Python plugin.
Okay. All right.
And you see how now sum is an error because this function returns an int
And you're
right
giving
there,
a float.
and
Sure.
sum is a float. So I can't assign that to an int because it'd be a loss of precision.
Right. Just like if you'd put your value in quotes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, but apologies. I looked up the thing and I was using read.findAll instead of read.match, so that's where the error came in on my part.
Yes.
Ah.
There are several. There's find, match, find iter, and find all are things that you can do with regular expressions, and you have to pick the right one for the job. And with that, if there's no more questions, I will turn it over to Dave Satwitz. Is that
All
the
right.
situation we're in now?
Dave, you ready?
Am I unmuted?
I hear
You
you.
are.
So let's share my screen here. And I had some I was going to make some comments about the Swift programming language to begin with. And it's Apple's programming language. It's although it is open source, and it it is an open source language, and apparently it runs on Windows and runs on Linux and stuff like that too. But Apple insists on it. What are they insisting on it now, or can you still run Objective-C and stuff like that to
Oh,
get?
yeah, I think you can still do the Objective-C if you're a glutton for punishment.
Or maybe if you had a legacy app or something like that.
Sure.
Some language features. It's compiled. It's strongly typed, and that is you have to declare your variables. It has object orientation, and if you want to, I never really got too much. I stopped programming professionally 10 years ago and never really did too much of that. So I don't really think in terms of objects unless I force myself to. It has an IDE with it, and I'm going to do both the IDE and the just the Vim and command line versions of this program here. The IDE is pretty good. It's required for Apple apps, or you can use an older one, although it works on Windows and Linux. It does its blocking with the curly cues. Oops, I should does its blocking with the curly cues. Python does it with just indents, although I think Xcode will sort of do that for you anyhow, but you don't have to. It doesn't require the indentation. You declare your variables, and it will infer the type of it if it can. And like in this case, we have var a equals 0, so a is going to be a variable, and it's going to be an integer type. Or you could say var b is, and explicitly call it an integer, giving it a initial value there. In case of the second one here, you don't have to give it an initial value. And it distinguishes between mutable and non-mutable values. For if you're going to change the variable, change the value, then you have to use var. If you're not going to, this is the only time you're going to set the value, then it wants you to use let. And the Xcode will tell you about that and sort of nag you. It lets it go you can go on with it if you use var and never change it after that, but it tells you. And it also distinguishes between characters of length, between string and a character of length 1. It calls it a character instead of a string. And sometimes it doesn't, they're not interchangeable. And I've never been able to figure out why it does that, why that's important to it, but it seems to be. It does looping with while, with the Boolean at the top. It'll do it with repeat, with the Boolean at the bottom. It does it with a for, either iterating over perhaps a length of, a range of numbers, or in the last case there, over a string, or in the case of our problem here, we'll get lines out of a file with a for loop. It's got string variables. It's got double 64 or float of 32-bit integers. You can declare it, for instance, 12.34 makes it a double. Or you can declare, and if I click on this, it'll go to the next page. The var red, green, blue are all going to be double precision variables. And it'll support ints of 32 or 64 by definition, depending on the platform that you're on. So these days, most of them are 64s, I guess. And how far back you got to go to get a 32-bit machine. It has tuples, and it has it has tuples. I'm not using any of those in this. And it will, it only uses double quotes on character strings. It does not let you use single quotes. But you can do multiple lines with a triple quote. So in this last example here, any number of lines starting with the triple quote and ending with a triple quote. You can put it in, any number of lines in that. Like I said, it has a character versus a string. In the last case, we're pulling one character out of a string. So let's take a look at here at the getting these things tied up in my that's the one. Here is the data file that I had, if it will let me bring it over. Different data file than everybody else's. And here is the program that I wrote to do it. This is on the, I just wrote it in Vim, not using the not using Xcode, although we'll go into Xcode and put this same thing into Xcode. Foundation is a group of capabilities in here. This doesn't work if you don't include a foundation. I'm not sure what's
it's like your
in there,
library.
why that. Pardon?
Like your
It's a
library
library of things,
of
yeah,
functions,
of functions. So we have a file name. I've got it in over here. It's an Advent input 01.txt. Have to use let there because we're never going to change that name. And the contents of the file, the try is a Swift, one of those error, handling things. The exclamation point says just bomb if it
exceptionally
doesn't work.
handling.
Yeah, it really wants you to put code in there to handle if the file won't open. And then we're reading the whole thing into a variable called lines. It's the contents and splitting them into lines with the slash n at the end of it. Declare digits there, and the calibration for the first part of the problem is a variable now because we are going to change it. And it was implicitly an integer, although we could have declared it an integer. And so now we're going to iterate over our lines here for line in lines. And I set a first digit and a last digit here scoped within this for loop. Again, the curly braces on line 12 and line 30 there define the scope of that. And then another loop here for a character in line. And here I seem to have to turn that character, it is a character, into a string. And then I can find out if digits up here contains that character. And if it is, if the first digit was blank, if we hadn't set it yet, we're setting it to char, and always we're setting the last digit to the char.
Yeah, exactly like I did it.
Right. And so then I'm turning those both into integers. We could have added them, concatenated them together and turned it once into it. The question mark again, it wants you to handle an error condition here, and I just made it 0 if it returned an error. But then the calibration for the first part was accumulated plus equal the first integer times 10 plus the last integer. And that got the right answer. Printed it out there in the print statement. You can include a variable as part of the string.
Just like an F string in Python.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. And you
So,
run it, and that gives you 54708.
Right. And so here we have that program. Let's expand it out a bit. And if we Swift it, it's going to tell us that the first number in my case was 54708, and it should be 54708. That's what I typed in, and it told me it was fine.
Did that
Now
that took a while? Did they have to compile it and then run it?
It did. I think that's because it needed to load it into memory. If we do it again, it will do it right away.
Okay. So I think it compiled it and then ran the result.
Well, either that or it's remembering. I think it had to go find the Swift compiler and bring it into memory.
Sure.
I think that's what it was doing.
Okay, so it's probably compiling it again each time.
I would think so. I mean, we can.
It's not cached in memory. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you make if you make the smallest change.
Yeah. Let's.
You just add another blank line or something. That would be enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it must have just been loading up the,
Okay. Yeah. Because you hadn't run the compiler since in a while, so it wasn't cached.
in a while, yeah,
Sure.
since this morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get to the second part, and this one I didn't do
Yeah.
right because I didn't understand the thing about the the letter form of the numbers overlapping each other.
Sure.
So what I did is once again, I'm iterating over the lines that we had, and I changed the line by using one of their methods on the line on the string, which was replacing occurrences. And so this part here is just a in Swift, just one of the ways you can pass arguments in. In this case, internally there, they have called something 0f or of, that's of, OF.
Mhm.
And they've made you specify it on this line here with the variable name that it's going to be and the colon. You can also write that function in such a way that you don't have to put the OF in there. It'll do it positionally. But that's one of their options here. And in this case here, you can just flop them around in any order because you're specifying what the variable name is. That's a Swifty. And so what I did is I replaced 1 with 1 and 2 with 2, and then did the same on that the resulting line, did the same thing. And they kept telling me that it wasn't right. And so I added some more stuff in here to try and print out stuff out and see what was going on. And what we come out with then is their commenting system. It's double slash to comment from there on to the rest of the line to comment it out. It also works with a block of code. You can put in a where is
Like C.
you can put in a slash.
Yeah, I don't think you need a second asterisk there. I think just slash asterisk.
Slash asterisk is probably enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually put in a
Sure, make it stand out. But
yeah. And
So-
you can block out a bunch of code. We'll do that in Xcode as well because it nicely then puts everything in the middle of that in italics, so you can visually see that it's. So the rest of it is then exactly the same, but this isn't right because this does not accommodate the ON or TWONE for 2 and 1. It doesn't.
Search through your data file for that string. In fact, I see it on line 4. Line 4 of your data. That TWONE. It's going to replace the TWO with the digit 2, and then you're going to have NE, and that's not going to turn into 1.
But it doesn't need to.
In that particular
case, right. Now, if this were
but if that had been the end,
it would. Right.
Right.
So that was one of the questions that we were coming up with. I think along this line here, if I, without doing regexes on it, I think if I did something like replace
that to
this with
O1E.
O1E.
Yep.
And
Yeah, the first letter and the last letter.
yeah. If I did that, let's
Do it all the
put
way
it
through. Let's see what you got.
there.
No, it's O, not 0. You want O.
Oh, I do want O, right.
Yeah.
And did it
And T3E.
E, T, and F, R,
Mhm.
and
Assuming there's no more than one letter overlapping.
yeah, it wouldn't matter, right? But we'll just do this one
Yeah.
here just because
Yeah.
that would be more visually apparent what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's one
now,
half.
where was it? Where did I have the here it's down here.
Right there.
And
Yeah. 54087. So can you bring up the web
right,
browser?
so
and
I got a
plug that
different,
in?
I did get a different answer, right?
Yeah. So let's go plug
Okay.
that in.
Um,
See if it's the right answer.
Pardon?
Let's see if it's the right answer.
This is Advent?
Yeah. You got it right there. It's the first thing that came up. No, at the top. Running the top hits right there.
And
You go down to the one at the bottom. Yeah, scroll down. There should be a place for you to key in your number. There you go.
and right now we have 54087.
Yeah.
Okay. I
That's
got a
the right
gold
answer.
star.
All
You get a
right.
gold
Right.
star.
Like,
Yay.
Wow.
Mostly because I wouldn't believe I was wrong.
Yeah. You were
Well, I
certain
didn't
it was a-
understand the didn't understand the problem there. I wasn't thinking about that. So okay, so let's take a look at Xcode. And what we can do here is do a file new. A file new project. And to start a project, what you can see is we get all kinds at the top here. They can do an OS, a Mac OS, a Watch OS, and each one of these has different templates for starting your application. I've only used one of them. Well, I tried to do a Watch one and didn't get very far with it. And so if we click this here, and do a next, and we give it a name. And we'll do a next on that. And wait, this didn't come up right. Create it.
Yeah, you don't need to create it.
Right. So what it's done here is it has created the whole the template for it. And it's a stub of an application. And in just a minute here, it's going to finish its again, it's loading some stuff up. Once we get going, it does this. And this is in its its test system here, the application Hello World. What's neat about this is if you make a change here,
Yeah.
it is doing that real time in the application here. And so
If
if
you
you
make an
want to
error,
ice
yeah.
it out, I mean, it's really helpful it to be able to do that, and it you know fits it in. I've got this set for doing on a to be able to download it to the phone. So it started off and it created the stub of an application. This is enough to work. If we run this, it will come up in an emulator, which is from which you can debug. Or if I put my phone in there, it'll get all the way down to the phone.
Yeah. First time launching the simulator is kind of slow.
Yeah. Failed to initialize login.
That's probably nothing.
Yeah.
I get a lot of errors in the simulator that I don't get in a real phone.
I don't know where the
It's ready.
Yeah.
So
it's coming up right here. It was paused. It's yeah, this is no, that's not quite right either. Calculated the numbers. I must have done this wrong here. I don't have. Well, okay, let's move on here. If we open,
you can do it as a playground too. You can
yeah,
compile
if we
script code in
open,
playground.
and I think the one we wanted here is Mug Adventures 01. Getting lost in this.
Oh, there you go. Here's the
Here
count
we
the first
that's
half.
because
Yeah.
that's because I already had it open. So
Yeah.
Here is what I did to put that that into this emulator here. I added right here the Mug World, and then I added a button, and we should be the button called First Half. And with that button, when you click that, you have to give it a function that you define that is going to fire when that button gets clicked. And so I have it here as first half clicked. And up here, if you define some variables as static and private, as soon as they get changed, it changes on the screen. So when I clicked first half over here, by setting the variable first half calibration, it updated the screen. That's the mechanism it uses there. And so I've defined a function here with the word func. That's their keyword, first half calibration, and first half clicked. And then all that's doing is calling first half calibration. Well, no, it's calling
first half.
Calc first half, and placing that in the variable first half calibration, and that's what changes it. I don't know, just as a matter of style, it seems more flexible to have a very small stub of a program per click. That way you can call this part of it from other things, and then I added the one for the second half as well. And here's the code for the first half. Minor little deviation here in writing it. at one point I had defined a variable on line 49 and 50 that I never used because I wound up putting them in as first digit instead of digit 1 and last digit instead of digit 2. And here is Xcode telling me about that. Now it lets this go. It doesn't, but it tells you that you've defined
Now,
something in there.
if you click that little triangle, that little orange triangle, you'll get a choice. You should get a choice. You can tell it to fix it. It'll change the var with. Well, that's kind of a weird fix.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. You can hit Command Z. It'll undo it.
Yeah. Or you. I've got Vim here. I can use you.
Oh, you got Vim bindings turned on in your editor?
Yeah. They
Yeah,
don't
okay.
all work
No,
completely.
it doesn't
Some
work
of the
enough
things
for
that you
me.
really like
Yeah.
aren't there. But,
Right, right.
but here we can
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, or you can change it. Well, yeah, comment it out because you're not using them.
but I'm not using them, so we'll just
Right.
comment them out.
Right. So let's go fix your second half function the same way we did the other one.
So this would be
Oh, with copy and paste.
that's in a. It's not in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Copy and paste is. It's not in this. It's in an editor and a.
You can copy. I'm not telling you to copy and paste now.
Yeah, you
because
could.
You're halfway
Yeah,
through. But
right.
if
But you can tell
were
me how to do
copy
it. I
the-
think you did once, and I didn't listen well enough.
if you copy to the star register, the asterisk register.
We're gonna have to
So-
do that when I can.
When you're not under pressure.
Yeah, because I got to know that. Because so other than that, it's the same program except I
Right.
have
The data.
the
is
entire
there, yeah.
data file into a function here.
Sure. Sure. So hit the run button again. Let's see what it does. Okay.
I don't know why this isn't
Look at that. That's
was
the correct number.
that was the right number, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we've got more time, since this isn't coming out right, I'm not getting the picture of the phone here. I don't know what is wrong with that. Let's see.
Well, you got my Mac chosen. So, well,
I must
I
have
think maybe when you created the app, you chose Mac app.
No, I've got
instead
it
of
on
a-
my phone. This worked. I have it. It's the app is on my
Huh.
phone. It won't run,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure right now, because
Yeah.
I've changed it here and it's gonna know that.
Sure. Hey,
Oh, no, it does. So, well, doing something a little bit different here. Let me turn off screen sharing and get, now I gotta turn on the camera, start video. And where am I? Right here. Okay, right here. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but that has come down to my phone and it runs on an app on the phone. So I didn't change the icon for it, but right there's the app on the phone, and if I touch that, comes the the app that we see over there. And if I touch the first half, it runs it, and the second app, well, the second app, I didn't re-download it to the phone, so it's going to get the wrong number. Okay,
Very
that's
cool.
Swift.
Are there exceptions in Swift? Exception handling?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I just avoid that because I never. Yeah, they want you to do that with everything. We've got well, right here on line 134. There's an exception handling.
You're
for
not sharing
this,
your screen.
kind of a default. Oops. So where am I going on my screen? I don't see my. You have it now?
Yes.
Okay, so here on line, it's line 134. That's an exception handling. That double question mark there is an exception handling. There's a whole world of how to handle that. Back in the yeah, here it is. Here, this is the way it's supposed to look. I don't know what you know. I don't know why it doesn't, but that's the way it's supposed to look, just like your phone. Here, in opening the file,
Yeah, right there, line 5. You got to try.
oh, right, the try,
That's,
right.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of, the
with the
classic way would be
exclamation
try
point,
catch.
right.
Yeah,
With
it'd
the
be,
exclamation
try with a
points
block of
that,
code.
don't bother, just blow up if it doesn't. But if you do
Yeah.
that a little differently, you can catch the error and do whatever.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what the exclamation is. They'll like try it, and if it
Yeah,
doesn't,
it's just do
let it
it
let
and
it
blow up if
crash.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
means I know what I'm doing. Just do it. Damn it.
yeah.
Or yeah, we aren't bothering putting all the code in for exception handling
Yeah.
here.
Right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. The solution is for at least 1A is very similar to how I did it in Pro.
Right.
Just down at line 25 and 6, where you're taking each digit, turning them into integers, and then multiplying by 10, adding the second digit.
Right.
I
And you're-
converted it to a string.
Adding the digits.
And your solution,
or concatenating the digits and doing it with one, you're right. Toss up there, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And right there, there's
And your-
exception too. There's another bit of exception handling on line 25 and 26.
Right, in case int in case what you passed to int isn't numeric.
Right, isn't numeric, right.
Yeah.
But all this says is substitute 0 instead of you can put in, you can launch the space shuttle from the
Yeah.
I think your solution to part 2 is unique and interesting.
Yes, it is.
Definitely nobody else did it.
I hadn't thought of it that way. It's a neat way to do it.
Yeah, I knew everybody else to do regular expressions.
Okay.
I mean,
So why be like everybody else?
I'd
Right?
be like everybody else.
Have you guys got time for me to show off how I did it in Bash?
Sure.
Sure.
I mean, we're past
Absolutely.
9 o'clock, but I'll hang around and see it.
Cannot start screen sharing while the other participant.
Oh, I
Oh.
got it. Hang on. I got to stop my screen sharing. So it is, right there, stop screen. Okay.
See if I can do this.
Something's
What
got to.
version of Bash, by the way?
Whatever the latest LTS Ubuntu comes with.
I hope 5.
2404.
Can you see like penguins running around the screen?
Yep. Yeah.
I like using this. I work at a Windows shop. I like this program, MOBA Xterm. I love it so much. I actually paid for a registered version.
Wow.
This one is just my one at home. The unregistered, the screensaver, you got to click to wake it up.
Yeah.
So
are you in WSL doing this?
no, I'm on a Ubuntu virtual machine on DigitalOcean. This is my this is my robo caller telemarketer torture asterisk box.
Okay.
If you guys want a demonstration of Lenny answering telemarketers listening to recordings, it's like a hobby of mine. But anyway, I'm not an expert at Bash, and I thought this was a great opportunity to learn how to be elegant. Syntax, punctuation in Bash has always mystified me. So correct me where I'm wrong. I'll try to go through my flow. I call this a shebang. This tells it what I want to run. Bash is a scripted language that has to have the functions declared before you do anything. So it really starts right about here. I set a variable called sum to be 0. This is going to be my results. I'll tell you, I like to debug my stuff. I figured while I was running it, I wanted to create a file of each line results so that if I need to debug, I could see it. And I don't like it saying file not found, and I want the file to be left over. When the program is done, I'm intentionally leaving it there. But I guess the meat is I made a file called input text. And if I run this command, internal file separator is like a blank line, and I'm going to assign it to a variable called line. And when I do that, I get a result. I just lost.
Call process line on each line.
So my function, I'm going to call process line on each line. So that brings me up to here. So I don't really have to say that it's a local variable, but I guess for some reason that I did. But this function right here, I thought was super slick. This regular expression will return only the digits 0 through 9 and put them into this variable. Then this one will tell me how many characters long that result is. And there's really only 3 results that I care about. If there are no digits whatsoever, I call it 0. If there is only 1 digit that comes back, then I duplicate the 2 digits. If it's anything else, I take the very first character out of that string as a digit, and then the -1 is the last digit that's inside of that string. And then I like to print the result on the screen as it's processing. So in case things break up, I run through after I run that function, I just add the sum to my result. The double parentheses is arithmetic in Bash. And then I print out the result. So if I were to run this, you see that it processes each line and gives me my final total.
And did you plug that into the website?
And I plugged it into the website and it came back correct.
Excellent.
So I guess I'm kind of chuckling. You guys must get paid by the line for those programs because for me, the regular expressions punctuation in Bash has been blowing my mind for the last 30 years. And it was a fun, I didn't do the day two, I guess. I got kind of
Sure.
stuck on the uppercase, lowercase. I kind of worried that in my world, I deal with dirty data all the time, and
Sure.
somebody's going to put a capital letter in one day, and the instructions didn't really say how to deal with that. I thought so. I never did the day two.
Well, it's pretty good though in Bash.
And I'm all for the worry about memory. You know, when I first started on our project at work, you know, databases and data was small. And nowadays, just like you, terabytes of stuff. So
Sure.
I resist the idea of loading everything into memory for this type of a process.
Right, because 1,000 lines of input's not that big a deal, but
A billion is.
a billion lines of code, a billion lines of input, it could be a problem.
Questions?
No, it looks
It's pretty
good.
darn cool.
No, I like it. That's, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
All in Bash is a saying that I tell my guys at work that
Yeah,
I gravitate towards Bash. I never
sure.
got good at Python or C or all this other stuff.
I've got to go. I'll see everybody later.
All right,
Bye, Joe.
thanks for coming. I hope you
Bye.
come back next
Thanks,
month.
Joe.
Yep. See you then.
Well, I tried using a pipe to solve the first half of the problem. I didn't know till you started that there was a second half because I hadn't plugged in my number.
Ah, yeah, that's when it unlocks the second half.
But I was able to use a pipe to get the correct number. I did plug it in.
Did you do it in Bash and use the pipe? How did?
Yeah, I happen to use it, but basically I use sed and regular expressions and DC, the calculator.
Really?
And
That's
so
pretty good.
Show that?
I can show you the pipe if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to see it.
I haven't done this before. Let's see.
That's Jim McClellan was
Yeah.
threatening to do it and said,
No,
So
I was
this
good at
is-
an awk.
a knock. Oh, that's right, knock.
Yeah.
So this
So
is
that's
the
your
line
program.
right here.
Right.
And so
Pipe it through sed, stripping out any alpha.
it strips out any alpha, it uses the
Uh-huh.
class rather than
Right,
specifying the letters.
right.
Um,
Pipe it through sed.
Then I take a look to see if there's only one digit. And if there is, I repeat it here.
Okay.
So 1-digit lines get turned into a double number. And then I look for the case where there's 3 digits or more. And I just return the first capture group and the last capture group at the end, and then add a plus sign after each result. So for the sake of the DC command, last line a P to print the result. And that's the result, and that result works. Now, as I think about this isn't going to work at all for the second half of the problem, because I really can't produce one result that will work properly when I'm looking for the first match of of TWONE. I need, if I'm looking for the first part, I want the ONE part of that.
But you could
And
do the same
TWO
thing
part-
Dave did.
I'm sorry,
You
what?
could do the same thing Dave did. Before you look for numbers, you could do a replace using sed, replace like TWO with T2O,
Yes.
right? Like
But
the very
then-
first thing before you strip out alpha, you could replace ONE with O1E and TWO with T2O. You know, you'd have to have 9 of those little sed commands. In fact, you can do it in one sed command, but separate your little snippets of sed in semicolons.
Right.
And basically do it the same way Dave did. Turn all those things into digits with your leading and trailing characters on them, and then strip out all the stuff that's left.
Well,
Yeah.
but in that case, though, it won't the result still be determined by the order in which I do the substitutions?
It'll work just like Dave's did.
Yeah, it'll work just like Dave's. Yeah.
Or if you're a masochist, you could just slice off the last 6 digits, reverse it, and then do a search for that.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mark was saying that all of our programs were too long. I think your program is shorter than Mark's.
Yeah, he does
Yeah,
get paid by
yeah.
the line. Mark does.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah, you could make it work with the strings.
in any case,
it'd be a longer line.
there are probably much better ways to do this. And some of you guys know what they are, but even doing this sort of thing. But instead of taking something I was familiar with, I thought I'd try to learn something and go back to 1985 and some of the commands I read about then and see
Sure.
if I could refresh my
Sure.
memory or learn for the first time how to do
I
some of these
applaud what you've done.
Yeah, that's quite unique.
So, and I really love this said version. I mean, this is great. I like the bash one too.
Yeah.
and I appreciate that comment about the length of the program. But what we were setting out to do here was to show different characteristics of the language, the different languages that we were using. If all we wanted to do was show different ways to solve the problem, we could have done it in the same language. And
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be interesting if somebody knows enough about Go to do a parallel processing thing on this. To
Yeah.
I mean,
create coroutines and
yeah, to
Run 'em
break
both
it.
at the
Well,
same- yeah.
because the point is to figure out how to do that, not to that
right,
you
right.
need to do it in this case, but to figure out how. And
Well, the first
I'm
thing
just
is to
so
make-
glad. I'm just so glad that we got some of the attendees to participate. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you guys for doing that. Yeah. Huh. Well, this worked out much better than I expected. I thought it would be cool. And I was really looking forward to seeing it in other languages like Rust. I really wanted to see how that would work. But the fact that we got so much participation is great.
I thought about writing it in Fortran, but it's
Yeah.
been 40 years since I've done that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
where
We
would
could
you
do it,
get
but
a
we'd have to find
Fortran
punch cards and a
compiler?
reader.
Can you get a
Where are you
Fortran
gonna find it?
compiler?
Yeah, there's a GNU Fortran.
GNU
Is there?
Fortran, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I'd have to install it.
Yeah, right. Right. And nobody
Is
did
there
it
an
in this.
object-oriented Fortran?
Object-oriented Fortran?
Yeah.
I don't know. We could have done it in COBOL, but COBOL's terrible at processing strings.
Well, this
Well,
was
that's pretty good.
definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, think a little bit, guys. If you come up with other things we could do like this, I'd be all for it. You know, I'm not saying we need to do it every month, but it's a kind of a fun way to run the meeting. And everybody learned something.
It was good to have the announcement of what you were doing first, so I could actually spend an hour thinking about it before seeing other people's solutions.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And really, you know, we just got the announcement out like last Thursday or Friday. We should have sent it out weeks ago, but we're still in a state of disarray after losing Craig. But
Well,
we're doing what
I'm
we can.
sorry that I really missed the challenge, because I would have done it up in C.
Yeah. Well, hey,
uh,
do it and see, and come to us next month. We'll take a few
sounds
minutes if
good.
anybody wants to add to it.
Yeah.
You do it in C, and I'll do it in the lock. I don't hear anybody offering assembler.
Oh. No, I'll forgo that.
Yeah. That sounds like a Justin thing, but I think he's gone.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go eat my dinner.
All right, well,
All right, Wolf.
See you later, Wolf.
See you guys. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
Bye. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate it, everybody.
All right.
And
Take care.
hope to see you next month.
Bye.
All right. Bye.